187. That's the entire F-22 fleet. Not 187 active, not 187 deployable on a good day. 187 total. Every Raptor ever built, ever delivered. The complete American inventory of dedicated air superiority aircraft fits inside that number. China built more J-20s than that in the last 4 years. Think about what that means. The United States spent 2 decades and roughly $70 billion developing and building the most capable air superiority fighter in history. China looked at that number, 187, and decided it was a starting point, not a ceiling. By 2024, the J-20 fleet had crossed 300 airframes and was still growing. The gap between those two numbers stopped being a gap. It became a math problem, and America was losing it. But the Air Force had an answer for this. The Raptor was never supposed to carry the whole weight alone. The F-35 handles multi-role. The Raptor bridges the gap and then retires. On schedule, somewhere around 2030. Clean plan. Sensible plan. Then the retirement plan died, and the jet that was supposed to hand off gracefully flew its first offensive combat mission in 20 years of service. To understand how a jet with a scheduled end date ended up dropping bombs over Iran, you have to start at the beginning, with what the Raptor was actually built for, and why the world it was built for stopped existing before the jet ever fired a shot. Welcome to Stealth Insider. The Raptor didn't start as a jet. It started as a problem. 1981. The Soviet Union's Su-27 flanker is flying, and it's a genuine shock. The most maneuverable fighter NATO has ever faced, designed specifically to kill American aircraft over European airspace. The Air Force runs the numbers on how an F-15 handles it. The answer is badly, at scale. And badly at scale means a lot of dead pilots. So the Advanced Tactical Fighter program begins. The requirement is extraordinary. Stealth, the ability to cruise at supersonic speed without lighting the afterburner. A radar that sees everything before anything sees it. Not an upgrade, a generation leap. Lockheed wins the contract. They call it the F-22. But here's the problem with building the perfect fighter for one specific war. Wars don't wait. The wall comes down in 1989. The Soviet Union dissolves 2 years later. The threat the Raptor was designed to defeat stops existing while the jet is still in development. The Air Force keeps building anyway, because the requirement was real even if the enemy wasn't anymore. And because by that point, the program has too much momentum and too many contracts to stop. The Raptor enters service in December 2005. The Air Force's operational priority that month is close air support over Fallujah. The most capable air superiority fighter ever built arrives into a war being fought with body armor and IEDs. They wanted 750 of them, then 648. Then 381 as an absolute minimum. They made the case in every budget hearing they could get into, because the Raptor wasn't just an aircraft to them. It was the institutional argument that pure air combat was still coming, that the platforms and the pilots to fight it needed to exist before the fight arrived. But one man didn't see it that way, and in 2009, that man had the budget. His name was Robert Gates, and he did something no adversary had ever managed. He stopped the Raptor's production line. Robert Gates had a case, and it wasn't crazy. April 2009. The United States is fighting 2 ground wars. The threats that actually exist: IEDs, insurgent networks, the grinding work of counterinsurgency. None of that requires the world's most advanced air superiority fighter. It requires surveillance, logistics, and more troops on the ground. At $143 million per aircraft, The Raptor's cost is a genuinely hard sell to a Congress already funding 2 ground wars simultaneously. Besides, the F-35 is coming. Cheaper, more versatile, built for the full spectrum of combat. The Raptor holds the line until then. NGAD handles the far future, and the whole thing makes sense on a spreadsheet. Gates caps production at 187 and closes the line. The Air Force does not take this quietly. Generals testify. Congressional allies get phone calls. They make the case. Congress votes to add F-22 funding back in. Obama threatens to veto it. The line closes anyway. But here's what nobody said clearly in that hearing room. The F-35 was already late. Not a little late, structurally late. The kind that slides from months into years into most of a decade. And NGAD, the future platform meant to eventually replace the Raptor, wasn't even a program yet. It was a concept, a requirement document, and a lot of institutional optimism. For a while, the plan still looked credible. 187 Raptors, F-35 coming, NGAD eventually. The math held together if you didn't look too hard at the timelines. But on the other side of the Pacific, someone was doing different math entirely. While Washington debated timelines and budgets, something was happening on the other side of the Pacific that nobody in the Pentagon's acquisition office had fully modeled. The J-20 made its first flight on January 11, 2011. The initial Western read, "Cautious, not alarmed." Clearly a stealth design, clearly drawing on American programs in ways that US officials were already briefing Congress about. But the assessment held for years. Developmental. Interesting. Not yet peer. China had never built a 5th-generation fighter before. The engines were behind. Give it time. Washington gave it time. And China kept building. But before we get to the numbers, stop for a second. Because this is the part of the story where it's easy to frame what happened next as China outmaneuvering America. That's not quite right. The Air Force didn't make the wrong call in 2009. They made the right call for a future that never arrived. The problem isn't that anyone was stupid. The problem is that procurement decisions take 15 years to play out, and the world doesn't hold still for 15 years. By the time J-20 production crossed 100 airframes, the F-35 delays had already eaten the margin Gates built his case on. By the time it crossed 200, NGAD's timeline had slipped quietly by years. By the time the J-20 fleet hit somewhere north of 300, the United States Air Force had fewer operational 5th-generation air superiority fighters than China. Not fewer fighters total, fewer 5th-generation air superiority fighters specifically, the one category the Raptor was built to own. And 187 is the paper number. Maintenance and availability cycles mean somewhere around 100 to 120 are actually mission capable on any given day. But NGAD was still the answer. The Next Generation Air Dominance Program, a 6th-generation fighter funded and in development, was supposed to leapfrog the J-20 entirely. Except it wasn't ready. And then the program got restructured in ways that pushed the timeline further than anyone wanted to say out loud. NGAD's delays didn't just push back the future of American air superiority. They forced a decision nobody wanted to make. What do you do with a 20-year-old jet you already decided to retire? The answer is, you upgrade it. Not reluctantly. The Air Force looks at 300 J-20s across the Pacific, looks at the NGAD timeline, and decides the Raptor isn't a program to wind down. It's a capability to invest in. 3 problems, 3 fixes. Range. The Raptor was built for Europe, and Europe is not the Pacific. The Air Force develops conformal extended-range tanks, shaped to preserve the stealth profile. The jet gets reach without getting visible. Sensors. The Raptor's radar is exceptional, but using it announces the aircraft's position. So it gets IRST, infrared search and track, a passive sensor that finds targets by their heat signature without broadcasting a single watt. The jet can now look without being seen looking. And it gets the AIM-260, a new air-to-air missile built specifically to outrange whatever the J-20 is carrying. But range and sensors are the incremental part. The upgrade that actually changes what the Raptor is, not just what it carries, comes next. The Air Force is giving the Raptor the ability to command collaborative combat aircraft. Autonomous drone wingmen that fly alongside and take orders from the pilot in the cockpit. That's not an upgrade, that's a role change. The jet Robert Gates said was too expensive to keep building is now the quarterback of a future air combat network it was never designed to be part of. The Pentagon called the package a modernization effort. The contractors called it a lifeline. The pilots called it overdue. Congress called it a budget line item. But upgrades on paper and upgrades proven in combat are two different things. The Raptor had never fired a weapon in anger in 20 years of service. In June 2025, it did. Operation Midnight Hammer is not a well-known name yet. It should be. June 2025. The United States launches a coordinated strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. Hardened sites, underground bunkers built to survive everything short of a direct hit from the largest conventional weapons in the American arsenal. The B-2s carry the bunker busters. The world knows about the B-2s. What the world spends less time on is the aircraft flying alongside them, the jet providing the escort, the F-22 Raptor. First confirmed offensive combat mission in 20 years of service. Not a combat air patrol, not a show of force. An offensive strike mission, flown by a jet that had spent 2 decades at the edge of every conflict the United States fought. Close enough to watch, but never cleared to act. But here's what the operational record matters for beyond the history books. Proof of concept. The conformal tanks worked. The passive sensors worked. The stealth profile held in a real denied access environment with real air defenses actively looking for it. This isn't an exercise result. This is the test that counts. The Raptor flew that mission not because it was the only option. It flew it because it had become, through 15 years of upgrades nobody planned for and a replacement program that kept slipping, the best available option. The gap filler had become the plan. And that's the part of this story that matters most going forward. Right now, the most important air superiority asset in the United States Air Force is a jet Robert Gates tried to kill in 2009. It's flying with sensors it wasn't built to carry, commanding drones it wasn't designed to lead, covering missions its original requirements document never contemplated. NGAD will come. The timeline keeps shifting, but the destination is still there. Until then, there are 187 of them. 187 was supposed to be a ceiling. It turned out to be a floor. The Air Force didn't get the jet it ordered. It got the one it needed. If you want more like this, subscribe. We're working through every stealth program the US has ever fielded, and a few that died before they ever flew. Next week, we're looking at one of them. See you then.